Well, welcome back to the Family Building Podcast. We are back with Dr. Tammy Bradshaw Scott, and we just finished our first podcast where she told us a lot of background that she went through and a lot of trauma in her childhood. And out of this bloomed this beautiful psychologist, double master who's now helping people, especially in the adoption community, the adoption triad, adoptive parents, birth parents, and adoptees as a professional. So welcome back, Tammy. Great to
Thank
have you
you.
again.
Great to be here. Thank you, Ted.
So let's go through the adoption triad. Doctor, we have adoptive parents that, have so many have dealt with infertility or various trials and tribulations that bring them to adoption. Some are just simply called to adoption because they believe there's a call in their life to intervene generationally and take a child into their life. But how does your life experience, and how do you as a professional, as a life coach and a therapist and psychologist, how can you help them ready their hearts to embrace this broken world?
Oh boy. Well, it really starts with that desire, of course, and that calling on their life, and just preparing their heart to receive a precious gift. So if this is the couple that have not been able to have their own children, which many couples cannot. Um, but realizing that it is not a hopeless situation because there are so many children who need a home, and that it is just a way to bless someone else, a child, and a birth mother who needs a wonderful home, prays and longs for a wonderful home for her child. Um, that couple who may not be able to have their own, what a blessing and what a gift they are. So I think really helping them understand that. But then, as you said, there are those couples out there who just really feel called to adopt children who really need a home. Um, and I think that that is a very special calling and a very high calling that they have.
Tammy, your life experience, you were a picture potentially of their birth mom. So I I I see it as such a valuable thing that they could look at you and imagine you on the streets as a 14-year-old using drugs, having sexual relations, just it's a nightmare of a life. And you came from such a broken circumstance, probably better, safer for you to be on the streets than it was to even be at your home. How can you introduce you to an adoptive couple to begin to introduce them to how much brokenness? How can you train or how can you coach adoptive parents to empathize for people
Yes.
that they don't really know? Like they've never been on the streets like you. They've never been addicted to drugs. They've never been hopeless, right?
Is
How
such
can
an
you
excellent
coach somebody to
question.
get ready?
Absolutely. Um, it's a great question because so many moms who are, um, adopting out their children come from a place of true brokenness, drugs, homelessness, despair, abuse, violence. And so something that is really important is empathy. Empathy is just the capacity to put yourself in someone else's shoes. It's not sympathy, feeling sorry for, it's the capacity. So one thing I would really encourage and want for adoptive parents to understand is that this young woman um, has not chosen to be in the place of brokenness. She did not choose where she was born. Um, all the circumstances that lead up to her being a drug user, um, comes from very deep, deep wounds from her childhood. And I know it's difficult for most people who have good homes, loving parents, secure, solid. It's difficult for them to wrap their mind around how an expectant mother, how and why would she use drugs? Well, she wouldn't if she had a choice, but she didn't see that she had a choice. She ended up in a very bad situation. And if, as we've talked about the addiction and how powerful these drugs are, um, that has just sucked her in that place. But if you can come alongside, if you can put your arm around and support this woman who has experienced such heartbreaking circumstances that honestly I wouldn't wish on anyone, if you can do that, that gives her such hope and helps remove so much of that shame that she carries around. Because when you come from a background like I've come from, and many of the women who are adopting their children out, the shame is overwhelming. In fact, it keeps them buried in a way that they don't feel like they deserve to grow or to heal or to rise up. And so I would say to parents, those who are been called to adopt or those who can't have their own children and are looking to adopt, understand that yes, this mother is giving you the most precious, precious gift you could ever receive, but she too needs your love and your understanding for her. Um, that's so important.
Yeah, and we've seen, it's interesting you mentioned shame and guilt and just this legion of lies that they see when they look in the mirror.
Right.
Loser, addict, they've
Yes.
bought the name, they've bought the lie, and it's
That's right.
literally their identity.
Yes.
And I know that we try and work with our clients. I mean, I'm a lawyer at the end of the day, but it's trying to express their appreciation for the most amazing gift. And we've talked about this, like for our adopting parents, they've never hung out with. Maybe they've known someone that was steeped in addiction and homelessness, but this person who they would never hang out with is now going to become one of the most important human beings in their life because this broken, neglected, maybe trafficked, abandoned, abused, hated throwaway of a person is going to give them the most beautiful gift in a life.
That's
And
right.
whenever our clients look at that child growing up,
Mm,
they can either see a broken person or they can see a hero that made a selfless decision and died to her capacity to raise and give that child and entrust that child to somebody that could give that child something that she can't fathom. She never saw. She doesn't even know the model. And so this empathy that you're talking about is so key. This love for the broken world. This call isn't just to a child, but it's a call to a broken world. It's
that's
a
right.
broken people that are out there looking for help that if they could find a good loving, adoptive family, that would be a much better choice than letting child protective services take that child away from them and terminate their parental rights. How much
Right.
better a strategic placement than a taking. And
Yes. A
so,
100%.
yeah, I don't love what you went through as a child and a young adult, but we see the evidence of restoration in your life, Tammy, for someone who was kicked out of school at in the ninth grade for using drugs, who didn't have, had three children, um, you know, on the streets, crazy life that you had, and here you are. This is a possible this is a possibility that every birth parent that we work with in the adoption field could be the next Dr. Tammy.
That's
And
right.
so it's a
That's right.
beautiful picture to look at you because you're a picture of that restoration. And I
Mm,
hope that the audience here, especially prospective adoptive parents, could see their birth mom in your eyes and could
mm,
see them in your career
yes.
because of where you've
Yes.
come from. And
That's right.
so I hope that our adopting couples reach out to you, Tammy, and can be coached in empathy, right?
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that the more that we love a broken world, the higher number of adoptions that we're going to see because it is a loving choice. It's a
Yeah.
different choice. Let's all be pro-choice, right? And we want to
Yeah.
be a pro-choice world. Hey, adoption is a choice. So is abortion. So is letting your
Yes.
child go into the child protective services
That's right.
industry. But I think there's a lot more room for loving the broken world. And I think you're a great coach for people to hire to keep them on that empathetic trail.
And it's, I just want to say, um, the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of young children and being a part of a different path for them. I've often, and I am where I am today by the grace of God. Um, but I often have thought if I had had an adoptive parent, if I had had someone come along to give what parents, solid, loving parents can give, I just, it just blows my mind. Um, and to think about, and this is what's so important for your audience to know, I think, is why it's so important that we provide support for women who are giving up their children. Why
Mm.
it's so important we don't drop the ball because they are a life that needs that guidance and that love and that support. And if I might say, after I did have my child, I did have an abortion that was devastating for me and hurt and caused so much damage in my life for years. But do you know, Ted, I would have given that child to someone. I would have kept that
Mm.
child and given that child to someone, but there was no one there. And
Yeah.
that's why what you are doing is so incredibly important to provide the information, put it out there that there are choices and there are people to come alongside and help women. We say we want to see life given. We say we want to support abortion, but we want to support those women who are feel like they have no choice, but they do.
Well, that's the second part of the triad is the birth parents. They're heroes in this story too,
Yes, they
Tammy.
are.
And we're really hoping that you are going to be able to connect with these birth parents who make this sacrificial choice. There
Yes,
is this universal law, if you will. It's a biblical truth that when you give, it will be given back to you. In the same measure that you give, it will be given back to you. It's the whole concept of sowing and reaping. And so talk to
absolutely.
us about how you would coach that mother who is dealing with so much brokenness. She's now given up the most beautiful and precious and valuable thing in her life, which is a child. And
Mhm.
now it's post adoption. The child's in a great, safe home. The child's going to thrive and is thriving. The statistics bear that out. But here's the birth mom. So, how much
Yeah.
do they need to be with you, Tammy, coaching them through the next steps of life?
Well, coaching and supporting, um, and helping them understand that they gave the most precious gift and did the right thing for this young person, their child, who is going to have an incredible life and opportunities. Um, that type of sacrifice, that type of um, giving up, dying to the self and what, you know, selfishly, I want to hold on, but I know I'm not going to be able to serve this child well, give this child a life. Being able to acknowledge that and adopt your child is they are heroes. They are themselves heroes to me because they didn't listen to the lie of aborting the child, but giving that child life and allowing God to do a wonderful thing there. But for the mother who is grieving, because let's face it, there's going to be that. There is a grieving there. There is a um, you know, not carrying around the guilt and the shame, but truly understanding, putting it in the right category that you gave life, you didn't take life,
Yeah.
and that that is something to be so proud of and not ashamed that you can lift your head and know that you did something so beautiful. Um, but your life still matters. And to be able to see you heal in those different areas, to see that young woman heal from all the wounds, all the things that have happened in her life, you are just as important. And I'm saying this to that young woman who may be watching. You are just as important. Um, and no matter what has happened, whether being trafficked, whether being raped, whether being abused, your life matters. And it matters so much that God wants to bring healing and restoration to you. And you just need some people to walk alongside you.
You're exhibit A, Tammy. You were
Mm.
that person. And here you end up in college, 3 children, single mother, still not formally educated, and put yourself through college, but you had family in the way of a church you set around you, coaching
Taking care
you
of him.
and encouraging
Yes,
you,
yes,
and in therapy yourself. And so
yes,
you just seem to be exhibit A, and again, it
yes,
makes you authentic to any
yes. You don't
person.
have to stay stuck. You don't have to.
Yeah.
And adopting your child is just the first step. That's the first step in the right direction. And then the healing can come and begin and transformation. Mhm.
Now, again, you were that child. Let's go to the third part of the triad. The child, you were that child that was forsaken or put out. And I'm not saying that an adopted child ever should feel that, because they're strategically placed. So you
Yeah,
understand both being on your own, and you understand the need and the benefit for two-parent loving home. And that's
yeah,
what birth parents are giving these children. They are strategically placing them. Of course, there's agencies that are investigating. The court is making a finding by based on the evidence that this adoption is in the best interest of the child, and
yes,
these kids grow up. But at some point, they begin to understand the story. They might, as teenagers, start understanding the level of brokenness. You've had to go through those revelation. You've had to empathize and forgive and go back and kind of replay those tapes in order to take the next step as an adult in life. So talk to the adoptee out there who was strategically placed, who was given a good two-parent home. How can you coach them to embrace really that blessing?
mm, wow. Not only coming from my own story, but I have worked with many adoptees, and um, sometimes it can be difficult for them to they wrestle with the idea that their mother gave them up for adoption. Um, but I help them, and we can all help them to see that no, your birth mother gave you a gift, you know, to have a family that where you could grow and become all that God intended you to be. You were chosen. You were hand selected by this family. And that is very, very, very special. Um, for me, I just think goodness. how wonderful it would be to have been chosen, adopted, and given a chance to be in a beautiful home. I didn't get that chance.
Yeah.
My mother left and didn't look back. Didn't come back for us. I just think what bravery for that mother who gave them up and for the parents who came in to adopt and raise them. That is so special. That is just a real gift for that adoptee.
Give us a little bit more of a scientific understanding of what that is. When you strategically place a child in a good two-parent, loving home from, let's say, birth, right? Their brain, let's talk about brain development and how that has benefited that child now, which they may not have an understanding of. Can you speak
You're-
to that?
well,
Brain development,
now you're talking my language.
right?
Yes, yes, it's phenomenal. So we know of these mirror neurons. You've probably heard of them, that were discovered, I don't know, 15, 20 years back, where there are neurons in the brain of infants and toddlers who are firing these brain, their connections that light up and fire when there is face-to-face contact with the caregiver or the parent, and they look into each other's eyes. There is a developing of the brain, a strengthening of the brain. Actually, all areas of the brain are developing rapidly. Of course, we know this, um, especially birth all the way up until like 2, and it just continues. But in utero, that begins developing, and then the child is born, and now you have this opportunity to, you know, to help the developing brain, which language centers of the brain, emotional centers. Um, we know that when a child is neglected and is not received that love, certain areas of the brain shrink and connections do not build and strengthen. Kind of picture it like this, Ted. It's like a web, like a big web. And you have all these neurons, brain cells connecting in the brain, and all the different areas of the brains, the capacity to learn, the capacity for language. Oh my goodness, developing memories that are going to, um, you know, teach the body how to respond. Trauma, when kids are exposed to trauma and not love, uh, particular parts of the brain actually do shrink. Occipital part of the lobe of the brain can shrink. So it is so, so important that a child, as young as we can get them into a stable, loving home, that child is going to benefit for the rest of their life.
Right.
And that you don't want to have to go back and repair. That's much more difficult. And I do
So
a
it's
lot of.
very interesting for the adoptee to understand that the very foundation of their thought patterns,
Yes.
their emotional responses, their ability to trust the adult world, right?
Yes.
Fight or
Absolutely.
flight, fear,
Yes.
right? Perfect love casts out all fear. But if you live
Yes.
in fear, you don't understand love, but they've always been loved. So there's a decrease in fear and an increase in trust and love and
Yes.
empathy. And so all these things are
And
developing
attachment.
rapidly.
Attachment
Attachment. Sure.
is critical to how that young person is going to grow and go out into the world. That
That's right.
attachment, we all know about attachment theory and how very important that is. So when a child can go into a loving home at a young age, attachment begins to happen. So this young person, if you are the adoptee, you've got to understand that, you feel secure in your world because you were, given the opportunity to have a safe connection and attachment to loving adoptive parents. And
Yeah.
that takes you into life, that takes you into the world.
Right. And it's a generational thing. It benefits
Yes,
their children and their children's
yes,
children. And we read
yes,
about
it
that too.
yes, we do.
Well, this is great speaking to you, doctor. And, again, your life experience just brings so much credibility to the type of therapy and coaching that you're doing. And we hope that the audience, members of the adoption triad, will reach out to you. Can you tell us how they can connect with you?
Yes. You can either reach out to me, via my email, which is tbradshawscott@gmail.com, or you can go to my website, which is, soulbloomrise.com, and reach out to me, and if I can be in a resource or a help in any way, that I would love that.
And we'll put those links below. Wouldn't you agree? I know for our law practice and even cases that we're doing in court, COVID just scaled
Yes.
the online presence. So you're
Yes.
able to do that remotely. You're able to do therapy
Absolutely.
remotely. Do you use Zoom to do that
Yes.
mostly?
Yes.
Okay,
Mostly Zoom. Yes, or, Google Meet, which I have some patients that we do that. So, yes, I I
great.
meet
So
people
you're
from all
you're
over. Mhm.
available worldwide, right?
Yes.
Well, we look forward to
Yes.
having you on the podcast in the
Thank
future,
you.
and we'd love to stay in touch with you. And I hope our audience stays in touch with you. Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate your input, and we hope to see you all on the next Family Building podcast. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.